Today, we're talking about something that organizations invest millions in and still get wrong: early careers. Graduate schemes, apprenticeships, internships, outreach, all designed to bring brilliant young people into your organization. And yet, businesses encounter all sorts of challenges. When they ask their young people to decide where they want to go next, they often freeze. They have no idea how to choose. They want you to do it for them. Or they go ask someone else, not just a manager or a mentor or their parents, but recruiters. Or they get lured away for no good reason by someone offering reassurance and guidance at a competitor firm. What a waste, what frustration, and all so avoidable. They leave, they disengage, they drift. Not because they're not capable, but because you're missing one critical piece in your early career development: the careers piece. If they don't know how to choose and who to talk to about it, it's going to come back to bite you. And we want to prevent that. So today, we're going to show you why personal career development must sit at the heart of early careers, the crucial gaps in most program designs, and we'll share some real-world stories of how the career equation helps early talent to stick, grow, and contribute faster than you could ever imagine. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Career Equation, a practical formula for career conversations that helps businesses and their leaders to engage, retain, and grow their talent.
Hosted by Erica Sosner, Career Equation creator, and Zoe Schofield, careers expert and equation enthusiast. Oh, teenagers, Zoe, who'd have them? You know, your kids are like teenage and into their early 20s, right? Making their first career decisions.
Yep, 22 and 19. I know I don't sound old enough.
and you know, my latest Good Housekeeping column actually was about the same, about, you know, people leaving school, leaving uni, and really panicking about how is the world changing? Are my skills going to be relevant? Am I going to be able to find my direction? So I feel this is a timely session really about young adults and kind of entering the workforce. And there's no question, right? The early careers, it's a key decision-making point where you suddenly have to start thinking for yourself for the first time. You're finding your own way without the comfort of like a big cohort of folks who are all doing the same thing, be it GCSEs or A-levels or whatever. And it is scary, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yeah. It's, you know, the whole mix of emotions at that age of your life, let alone those sorts of decisions about, you know, big career decisions about what next after that structured system of school, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a very common experience I find when we talk to people in early careers is this great anxiety about getting it wrong, that feeling like this is some huge lift-off point, and that if you don't know the answer right now for the perfect career, you'll be stuffed and nothing will ever work out after that. And I think it's really important, if you're listening as like a head of learning, a head of apprenticeships, to just put yourself back in that place, you know, the anxieties, the pressures, the desire to do well and to make the right choices, and to just remember that they're doing the best that they can with the knowledge and skills that they have. And of course, there's no question that an early careers, you know, programs that you're running and entry point is a key decision-making point where suddenly you do have to start thinking for yourself. And most of you will have these programs, be they apprenticeships, internships, grad programs, outreach, and all of these things are intended for you to help that new generation prepare themselves for a successful career in your industry. But given this context of, you know, the worries that they have just by age and stage, and then the sort of meta legitimate worries they have about, is the world of work going to have opportunities for me? Because we're already seeing huge reductions in grad schemes, in early careers programs. They're not wrong to be concerned. How do we make sure that in those programs is a kind of ongoing dialogue about careers and careers decision making? Because what we hear from you is that all of you have these programs, but then when we ask, how do you help them to make the decision at the end of the program about where they go in your business? How do you help them to know where they might find fit? And actually then it's like, we've missed that out in terms of the curriculum. And of course, career navigation skills, especially in the fourth industrial revolution, are an essential component of successfully navigating a career in your industry, whatever your industry might be. So, my experience is that very few people are currently thinking about how to drive retention through good quality career decision making. So today we want to help you to alleviate that gap if that's you and you're scanning through your curriculum on your apprenticeships and going, oh, actually, we don't teach them anything about how to decide, or we don't even point to the idea that they're going to need to decide at the end of the program. We're going to show you why you need to be integrating personal development into your early careers programs, and what are the kind of crucial aspects of early career success that you probably don't currently have in the design that are easy to remedy and retrofit. And then we're going to tell you some tales about how it works, how this might fit in to your own programs, and how the career equation has been used to drive retention and growth and mobility and confidence at that early career stage, so that your youngsters can focus primarily on being productive and really getting the most out of the huge opportunities that you are presenting them with. So welcome back to the Career Equation podcast. This is where we help you and your people take ownership of their career and design the systems that are going to help you to do the same. Let's go.
I think there's a moment in early careers when everything kind of changes. So I think we'll kind of like start there and talk about what that feels like for our early careers talent. And Mel, like you were saying earlier, it's like put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine for a moment that you go from a really structured system like a graduate or apprenticeship scheme where there's been really clear expectations of what they want from you and what's happening inside that program. And throughout that, you've been part of this cohort or moving forward together. And then suddenly it's over to you and you have to choose what's next for you. You are the one that's got to then navigate the sort of sometimes choppy waters and perhaps feeling like you want someone to throw you a life raft and rescue at that point. You have to decide. And the problem with that point is that no one has really taught you how to make those decisions. So not necessarily within the system of the scheme, the graduate apprenticeship or whatever type of scheme you've been on. It's not being provided to you in terms of in education, and quite possibly your family weren't in a position to kind of guide and teach you either. And then in that moment, which is kind of one of the most psychologically significant transitions in your work life, it becomes so significant for you because for the first time, you are responsible for your direction. You're the one that's making the decisions and you're thinking then about those long-term consequences. And you're often doing that with almost no tools at your disposal to help you to make those decisions and feel more confident about them. So in one hand, it's kind of super exciting that you've got your wings to fly, but it's also like terrifying. And without those tools and confidence, it's very easy then when it comes to decisions to sort of fall in the traps of things like selecting a role that really is completely the wrong fit for you, or perhaps letting someone else influence your decision. People pleasing, that's the thing that I used to do all the time, or following other people's ideas. You then begin to lose your confidence, your performance perhaps dips, or you get enticed somewhere because it looks super shiny and new and better over there. And they're saying the right sort of things to lure you in. So, those are some of the things I think we should be thinking about when we're considering, like, what does our scheme contain? How are we supporting those decisions? And are we putting people in the position of feeling some of those things I've just described? Or are we putting them in a position of putting their best foot forward because they've been equipped with the sort of talent tools to do that? So, Erica, some of the organizations get this early career stuff right, but many don't. So where do you think some of them are perhaps going wrong?
Well, I think, thank you, Zoe, that it's to pick up on something the point you've already made, which is that it's a big deal to suddenly go from decisions are really taken for you. You do your GCSEs, you can choose your GCSEs, but you do them. You go on to your next level of study and then you do that. And it's quite a leap from that to the scheme. And often in the scheme, there's quite a lot of support about how to, gently inducting people into your world of work, to then go, right, you are now fully autonomous. You own your career. Now you need to navigate and drive it, decide what you want to do next, find the right networks and make it happen. That I think is really, really intimidating and a kind of unreasonable request. Clients have these excellent schemes and they include things like rotations and getting exposure to different parts of the business, possibly having an amazing mentor or buddy to just help you deal with the day to day and really take a personal interest in you. Really good quality training about becoming familiar with the skills and the capacities and sometimes even the accreditations that are key elements to that industry and being credible in that industry. So a huge amount of thought and care is going into the content, but what isn't always flowing alongside it, it's a kind of reflection skill set that says, and so what? What are you learning about that? Which of those rotations did you enjoy and why? Which elements of working with other people or alone really sparked your curiosity? Which of the subject matters did you find yourself wanting to do your own discretionary research around? Because all of this is accumulation and information about where you might find your fit. And obviously, you're making all of this investment up front so that these young adults do find their place within your organization. So a little bit of investment in the training of how to have the self-insight to navigate my career skillfully and confidently make decisions based on what I'm seeing around me, what I'm learning, what I think my criteria need to be for fulfilling work is a really, really good investment, but it's often something that's missed. And we do it retrospectively. We do help, usually in the first year of a program, clients are coming to us saying, our young people need to make a decision and they're really intimidated by it and are procrastinating and we don't know what to do. So we'll often retrofit that using the career equation to help them to reflect on their career story so far. But the next year, we'll encourage you to start doing it from very early on in the program. And we'll tell you a little bit about how we do that in a minute. But in summary, I bet that if you look at your curriculum for what you're covering in your apprenticeships, your internships, your grad schemes, and any other junior entry-level programs, that career decision capability, how to make a good career decision and how to understand where you might find your fit isn't part of your curriculum. And the good news is it's really, really an easy thing to retrofit. But it's easy to make the assumption that, hey, look, we're going to give them options, we're going to give them choices, we're going to teach them about their business, and they'll figure it out. But they don't. Trust me, they don't. Whether we're working in luxury fashion or the defense industry, in, fintech or biotech or the energy business, I can tell you that in all of those places, when we've worked with early careers, they aren't working that out. They aren't making the connections and they are leaving it too late. But if you build it in and you gradually give them the skill set and the confidence, just like you give them the skill set and the confidence to relate to clients, manage projects effectively, articulate their ideas, that will become something they become fluent in. And because they don't understand themselves yet, because they don't understand your landscape, and because they don't know how to evaluate fit, if you're not introducing career navigation skills, you are going to create some real problems for yourself down the line. So, Zoe, let's take our listeners through the kinds of problems that we commonly encounter.
Yeah, definitely. And when those things that we've been talking about, the good parts of putting a navigation system in place, when that's not there, then the things that we'll see when we pitch into those first conversations with clients are things like the young workforce not being able to make decisions. They're finding it really difficult to make choices about what they're going to do next. Perhaps they're deferring that decision and they just sort of fall in or slot in somewhere for the time being while I decide what I want to do. Or they sort of stay in default mode in this sort of mechanism of I'm just going to stay in you tell me mode of what you want me to do. Or perhaps, they flake out where they kind of go in and commit initially, but then they pull back because the choice didn't really come from their own clarity or sense of self. It came from the pressure to do this thing at the end of the program. We also see burnout, don't we, in terms of where they've really pushed themselves to perform over and over again, but they're in the wrong role in the first place. So that then leads us to difficult places around burnout, mental health, etc. You know, or they're maybe trying to prove themselves in an environment that really doesn't suit them. And when we talk about environment, we don't necessarily mean the environment of the whole organization. It might just be they're not in the right bit of the business. And that's particularly important for businesses that are complex, perhaps in their structure and sort of opportunities. You know, so we're often seeing poor alignment for them. So they'll end up in roles, but they're not necessarily using their sort of standout strengths and gifts and talents, or they're not really engaged in work that they particularly care about or are particularly curious about or interested in. Or maybe they're doing work and they're like, I don't really know why I'm doing this, or I can't see the results of it. So like, what's the point? So they're kind of not really seeing a tangible output for them that makes them feel good. You know, and then you sort of add on to that, when those things are all happening, then you see sort of mental health strain, because when you have uncertainty and you add that together with pressure and then this feeling of lack of control about my destiny and what I'm doing, that all equals anxiety. That then leads to sort of like panic or wrong decision, or we freeze and make no decision, or perhaps we start seeking help and advice from outside. And that might be a conversation with a recruiter or another employer, you know, and then it's waste, isn't it? Because you've spent all of that money and time and investment on this wonderful talent and they leave. You know, they complete that education piece with you, that valuable insight, and then they go and take that somewhere else because they didn't necessarily have the opportunity or someone to talk to in your business to make those crucial decisions about what they're going to do next. No one to help them plan or see opportunities that they can't see. And so, you know, that has a knock on, I think, to at an organizational level, you know, that is that loss of investment. You've got then sort of broken pipelines of perhaps succession planning that you had in place. You're constantly in this sort of rehiring and, you know, putting energy into attracting the workforce in. So it's just this huge waste of time and energy. And for managers, it's frustrating because for them, it is a huge investment of their time in terms of training and supporting and encouraging this young talent. And I guess it could become quite easy then to feel a bit reluctant about wanting to do it all again and support and mentor the next sort of like group. And and then there's the talent, I suppose, the talent and learning teams that, you know, are impacted too, because they've then got this lack of critical talent to slot in and to look at places and opportunities. They might be then seeing poor engagement sort of scores when they're sort of going out to the workforce to find out how people are feeling. In effect, they have to go out and hire again. So there's a huge knock on there too. And I suppose what we're saying is that all of this isn't so much a talent problem. It's much more about there being a career navigation problem. And that we can help people fix, can't we, Erica?
Yeah, definitely. So there is hope, everyone. This is fixable, but I hope that we've just sort of been able to make the case for you of, you know, it's a big deal. You want them to decide. They want to make the right decision. They're anxious about it. If they don't have the tools to do that, then they make all kinds of impulsive or poor decisions that cost you financially, cost everybody energetically, and that it's easy to fix. So we're going to show you the fix in a minute, but I just want to layer in one more piece, which is the AI context. You know, we're entering a world where entry-level roles in particular are being strongly reshaped or just removed completely as a result of AI. A lot of the kind of task-based work, whether it's preparing presentations or doing analysis or setting up a project or evaluating and writing like simple documents, all of that is often being taken on by AI, and it can either do it better or in partnership, it can certainly do it faster than it was being done before. And we're already seeing these stats. So in the Big Four, for example, there have been significant reductions on the grad recruitment. KPMG has reduced its intake by 29% in like 2024, 2025 recruitment. The tech sector has reductions of as much as 46% for tech graduate positions. And 2/5, 38%, in fact, of employers are planning to hire fewer graduates because of AI, according to a 2026 report by Randstad. So obviously but particularly those occupations which have high exposure to AI, high correlations with AI, research, data analysis, legal roles, those are particularly experiencing as much as a 40% drop in job ads for young people. So there really is a context that they are right to be anxious around. And in that context as well, opportunities are being created, collaboration opportunities are being created, career paths have an opportunity to become less linear, and you can kind of take more leaps and cross-fertilize better than you could. But your early career professionals really are worried, and they are asking themselves and each other, what jobs will even exist in the future? What, therefore, should I be aiming for? How do I future-proof myself? There was an article in the Times this week with a journalist who did a kind of deep dive because his daughter said she wanted to be a financial analyst. And he went into, should she or shouldn't she? What can and can't be replaced? And on the back of that, she's decided to do international relations and go into the diplomatic service. But, being able to really understand what are we as a business planning for around AI, and how do you in your early career build that relevance and opportunity and let them know that there's still currency for the things that they want to be able to do. So if you're offering rotations without a reflection about where is AI going to take this particular part of the industry, or if you're exposing them to new things without interpreting what may or may not be happening within the sort of data context around that, or if we're giving them experiences that we're not sure are going to be relevant for the long term, we really need that kind of literacy and critical thinking about where AI in particular is likely to take them, and being able to think about that and to think about their relevance within that is very important. I just also was bringing to mind a set of books by Cal Halpin. Cal Halpin writes a lot of books about early careers, and if you haven't checked him out, I really recommend it. But he wrote a book fairly recently called Not Your Parents' Workplace. And this is also part of the problem, that obviously in the AI context, even the most well-intentioned and conscientious parent is not really in a position to advise as skillfully. The world is just not as familiar. And he wrote another great book a few years older than that, with his advice to early careers, which is be so great that they can't ignore you. So with that in mind, how do we support our young early careers folk to pinpoint where can I be exceptional? Where can I be really, really good? So that regardless of what is happening in the world around me, I'm recognized as talent. I'm recognized as a quick study. I'm recognized as someone energized and motivated to succeed in this industry. And I continue to be swept along within this business and thought of, regardless of the changes. So let me tell you then what we think the solution is here. So our key work is really about filling a gap in what we call career navigation. And we consider career navigation to be a core capability for thriving in the new world of work. It's not an add-on. It's not a luxury program. It's not a one-off chit chat with somebody about where I might go with no practical outcomes from it. It's not just a psychometric and a little debrief around that. It is really about instead equipping your young people with a real, simple, practical skill set for navigating the decisions they will need to make in their career, and to navigate them from the inside out based on their own self-insight, their skills, their talents, their interests, and aligning that with a curiosity about what work do we do here? And where might a person like me really find a place to thrive within this industry? And that's where the career equation comes in, because at its core, the career equation is about answering three really simple questions. What are you good at? What do you care about? And then where might I be able to create real value through doing things that I'm good at and that I care about? What does that value look like to me? And then all of that is that gives the person their design, but all of that is kind of held in the Petri dish of the environment that supports them to thrive. So being able to answer the question of where do I do my best work? What kinds of environments and cultures in this business? What kinds of people when I surround myself around them? What kind of learning environments support me to make a really, really good contribution within the niche of the things that I am really good at and interested in? And frankly, when early career professionals understand this, we see again and again and again that just everything changes for them. They stop guessing and they start deliberately designing, and they start doing exactly what you've been begging them to and come to us to do, which is to really own and drive their career. Because once I feel like I understand the controls and I understand where I'm going, why would I not do that? You know, I only put it in other people's hands because it feels way too overwhelming, and because I feel disempowered in terms of my level of skill and experience and knowledge of how to navigate this industry.
Yeah, and I think, you know, bringing on from that, the idea of the equation is how we then put it into practice in terms of when we're working with organizations. What we're doing essentially is teaching young people how to actively reflect on their career and experiences as they're going along, and to think about who they are and the unique design of them. So you were talking very much then, Erica, about the stuff on the inside. So they recognize who I am. What is my greatness? Like that bit. And so they're then ready to make those career decisions at the end of that program. If we're talking about a careers program, like a graduate scheme or apprenticeship, that they're already equipped at that point, and they're not kind of coming to the edge of this cliff without the tools to help them fly off of there. So what you want to kind of importantly remember here as well is that if you're going to ask them to make that big decision at that point, it needs to be front and center of their mind as they navigate throughout the program. So as they're doing the work and experiencing these different things throughout the journey of the program, they need that sort of mindset already and to be equipped with it, because you need to prepare them to make that decision with confidence so that they know so much more about themselves, the experiences, the environments, as you talked about, Erica, that will help them to be at the best. So it's not just about knowing the business and the opportunities within the business. It's about knowing themselves and how they might align with the future opportunities and their own potential. So when it comes to kind of being inside a program, instead of it just being about sort of rotating and then moving on to the next element without any reflection, we actually get them tracking their experience through the lens, if you like, of the career equation. And I often talk about like imagining you've got career equation goggles on as you look at the experiences you're having as you're going through that journey of rotations or those placements. Is, you know, what strengths have stood out for me and where did I use them in these experiences I've just had? What's been energizing me? Where and how have I made a difference? What impact have I been having? And when could I feel friction in the environment? And when did I feel like really free and like sort of well-oiled where I was? You know, what we do is help them to really do that reflection on a kind of continuous and ongoing basis throughout the program, so that then they're kind of gathering, if you like, that resource of information ready for those decisions as they move through. Because that way, what we're saying then is that every rotation that they might do becomes data for them about themselves and their experience. It becomes rich insights. And then what we do off the back of that is we work with them and help them to look at the experiences that they're looking for next. Like, what is it that I want to experience next? And how to set out and define their criteria for those experiences and the success that they want to have, and shape the goals around that so that they have ownership and can drive their career, but feel confident in those decisions. Because I think it makes it much easier, doesn't it? If you know what you want out of your work, you can then focus all your sort of time and energy on and go and getting that thing, rather than energy on the, I don't know, anxiety. And that really does begin to build a clear picture for them. And ultimately, you know, we've seen it. It leads to better choices, you know, where they're much more aligned with the things they choose next. That means that they can get up to speed and contribute faster because they're not focusing in the wrong place. And that leads to higher confidence. And crucially, which what we're always aiming for, is career ownership. Because they're saying, like, this is my career. I know me. I know what's going to be the right decision for me. And that's what I'm going to go after. And alongside that, what it means is that we also build into the program that managers, mentors, trainers, and other sorts of careers enthusiasts, if you like, are trained in the method as well. So they're already willing and ready to have conversations with these people as they're going through and off the back of the programs. So yeah, I think that's kind of, you know, how we kind of piece it in.
Yeah, and how you can too, right? It doesn't need to be complicated. Just the equation is the model that we use, but just embed a way of thinking from the start about reflecting on your career as they go through the program. If there is going to be a choice point at the end, make sure that they know that that is going to be happening, and think backwards from there about how am I going to prepare them so that they are ready to make an informed choice. And we'll give you some more tidbits around that as well. And if you're interested in using the equation, we'll also link to a couple of other episodes in the show notes where we kind of deep dive into what to ask and how to ask it so that you can think about that too. But let's give you some examples, because I think like sort of working examples are like the best way to kind of demonstrate this. One of our best successes was with Dassault Systèmes. They have a graduate scheme. We've also worked with some of their interns and their managers. But they have this fabulous graduate scheme. They've got lots of interesting technology to work and play with. They work across all varieties of tech that are about virtual worlds, from kind of helicopters to geology to 3D printing of organs, all manner of different kinds of tech. So there is an important lift-off point at the end of their scheme about needing to choose a direction of travel. And they were having quite high attrition at the end of the scheme because their graduates were panicking when they got to that point and they felt they needed to make a decision. They didn't know who to go and talk to. And so they were going to talk to recruiters and to the competition. And we wanted to stem that unnecessary attrition by supporting them to introduce the equation into their program. And this is an example where they came to us the first time towards the end of the program. And so we popped it in at the end as a retrospective review. But then when we were redesigning with the organization, we embedded some key components of reflection throughout the program that got us an even better result. So first of all, we equipped them to use the equation to reflect on themselves, on their strengths and their interests, and to be able to articulate those so they could start conversations with people in the business about understanding where their best fit might be. The second thing is that we enable them to be able to actively reflect on rotations. What did they love? What was more challenging? What were the bits that excited and energized them? So that, again, they can dissect and interrogate what makes a role work for me, or where are my strongest interest areas, or where did I get really great feedback that I had a natural aptitude for something. And on the back of these kinds of reflections, they were much better able to navigate the internal opportunities and be prepared to take a decision. So much so that attrition absolutely plummeted. We had a 300% reduction in the attrition at the end of their grad schemes in Europe. So there was increased internal mobility, and we were able to make sure that we kept the folk they'd invested in and helped them navigate skillfully through the business. They had much stronger confidence about the decision they needed to make at those key points of decision making. And as a result, better retention at those decision and lift-off points, and a better kind of outboarding, if you like, on the back of the scheme. It felt more supportive. They were more prepared because they knew where they were going. And it just opened up the dialogue by having one system for talking about career conversations. And whether that was reflecting back with the early careers team, whether it was with new managers, whether it was mentors and colleagues that they had met along the way, they were much better equipped to articulate who they were, what they were looking for, where they were going, and for the business then to be able to better support them to go and get those things. So that's been a huge success and a significant victory for the business in terms of adding in this small component to an already excellent program that just provided that career literacy.
Yeah, and sort of similar in some respects in terms of the technical nature of a company. But Thales, that we've worked with as well, comes to mind, Erica, with their apprenticeship program. You know, Thales is a global technology company specializing in, they're doing a lot around aerospace, cybersecurity, defense, etc. And I think the challenge for them was very much that young people are entering what are often highly technical roles in that organization. And that can become overwhelming in itself when you think about, well, how might I fit into the broader organization beyond the apprenticeship? And what if this bit isn't quite for me? And what we were able to do is help them by using the career equation to really, truly discover who they were individually. And I think that's the thing we come back to a lot in these sort of examples, is to get a clearer understanding of self so that then they're able to articulate that back to the business to see, okay, so where does myself and my greatness fit with a good alignment with the business and what they're looking for in terms of skills and interests. And again, we come back to the idea of this timeline exercise being so valuable to teach them kind of reflection skills and to utilize what they learn from that as they track their experience through the apprenticeship. So that, ultimately what that led to is they could see where they would be able to add value to the business, to a complex business. They could start to understand, so these are some of the different career paths, and this is what my design is. So these are the ones that are more suitable, I think, for the design of me. And that in turn sort of built confidence in what otherwise could be quite an overwhelming and technically amazing company to work with, that you could feel quite like, I'm not good enough for the company. Whereas I think they built the confidence to say, I know who I am, and these are the bits of the company that would work for me.
Another example, we worked with Puig, who are a luxury fashion brand umbrella in Spain. They work with Jean Paul Gaultier and Penhaligon and a number of wonderful luxury brands within the sort of perfumery and beauty space and fashion space. And they had an internship program that was something of a survival of the fittest. There was no guarantee at the end of it, actually, that you would get an opportunity within the business. But they wanted to better support people to have the very best opportunity they could. And so they started to design a program that included really raising awareness of all the different departments, what they did, how they did it, what the kind of job roles were in there, how to get into them, some of the history of the business, some of the culture of the business, really understanding discrete markets and lots of really interesting stuff. And then they also invited us along to say, how can we do an orientation? We had trained their global HR, so they were very familiar with what we did around the equation. And they wanted to embed that for giving the interns the very best opportunity they could have to find their right place. So that was really about helping them to get clear on, how am I made? How might I articulate that to the business? And then how do I take the continuing actions in terms of setting my goals, setting out my plan, and taking action and building my network so that I can be one of the people who secures one of the opportunities that do exist here. And I think what was quite good about this program was it really separated the wheat from the chaff, because the business was like, look, we've given you the very best chance that we can to understand, to perform in this environment, to know what you want and to go out there and get it. And those who will, and those who won't. And actually you could tell even in the sessions, who were the standout people, who were the people that you would want to employ going forward? What was their engagement like? What was their focus like? What was their contribution like? How generous were they? How clear were they about their next steps? How ambitious were their next steps? You could pretty much tell who's that top 20% and who is definitely not able, despite the best of support, to really pick up and run with this in the culture of the business. So that was a really exciting and interesting pilot for that business to run, and helped those kind of top 20% to clearly stand out, to distinguish themselves, and to find those opportunities in the business.
And I'm thinking of internships and programs, then BACB Bank comes to mind. They're a global banking organization delivering like super expertise around trade finance and investments. And what was great, I think, for BACB is that they decided to add this sort of vital career navigation learning really early in the process with interns, and remembering that these folk in terms of internship have only just arrived, and there's no guarantees for them or the organization at the back of that they would stay, that this would be a long-term thing. But what was so lovely is that BACB considered that it was sort of their responsibility as part of that outreach for interns to help them make the connection, if you like, between the range of the roles in the bank that they might not have even known about or considered, and how to hone that in line with understanding their own unique design as individuals. So it's like, they didn't have to do this and add this to the program, but they decided it was their sort of responsibility to help the interns have a framework to make these choices that they're going to be making now and throughout their career lifetime. So the interns were then able to use the framework to understand, as we always say, their unique design, but also their contribution, and then begin to build a narrative around that experience that would help them make those future choices, but also helps them showcase their experience, their knowledge and the skills that they've learned as part of that internship program. And that led to sort of better performance during the program, better conversations, and then for those where it was applicable, better conversion into full-time roles. And on top of that, of course, then it's a great piece of brand awareness, as small businesses become kind of part of the unique selling point for attracting varied talent, because they offer that part of the program, that component for extra learning.
Yeah. And for if you're listening, you're thinking, I'm a small organization, BACB is too. And it was really about presenting the opportunities to compete in quite a unique way with the big boys within finance and trade, and to attract talent early and give them a really comprehensive view about what does this business look and feel like? What are the roles in it? And here's how we support you to navigate your career around here, even within an environment where the structure might be a bit flatter, where it's not a kind of neat hierarchy of, upward trajectory or whatever. It's much more about that small business style of doing things and getting involved in lots of different stuff. So that was a really exciting pilot, and we're excited to see where that leads in year 2 this year. So why are we saying all of this, Zoe? Let's conclude for our listeners.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is if we don't teach career navigation, then you're leaving your most important talent decisions to chance, where they're just sort of like making it up to a certain extent because they don't know any better in terms of falling. So, and that's really challenging, particularly in a world where we've got lots of AI disruption in terms of what's happening in the future. That, non-linear careers, it is very much a roller coaster now in terms of where we might go in our careers. And therefore that means increasing choice points, because you could be flexing anywhere. And that simply isn't viable anymore. So by not teaching it, you're leaving them to work it out for themselves. And when they don't have anyone to talk to in your business, you're no longer then owning the conversation, and they'll take that conversation elsewhere. And you're sort of preventing them seeing the future in your business clearly. You're not helping them to make informed decisions. They'll go elsewhere to make them. And ultimately, you're wasting your investment.
Absolutely. So look, some simple things that you can do to embed this. Take a look at your existing learning design and think about where you could introduce early at the start of the program this idea of owning your career, and thinking about what kind of skill sets, what kind of thinking skills, what kind of checkpoints they're going to need to be able to do this in a meaningful way while you've got their attention for that 12 months, 18 months, 2-year period. Second, decide on where and how this is going to happen, and make it a continuous, ongoing conversation, a culture of career conversations, not a one-off workshop. So think about, how do we keep those touch points in, about embedding reflections about how is this rotation going? What am I learning? Give them a modality for starting to talk about that. When are the opportunities to review what they're now learning about the business and what might suit them? And what part can managers, mentors, early careers experts, buddies play in keeping their focus on where is my future here? What things excite me? And how can we as a business support you to start talking to those people in those fields? Thirdly, think about training your managers and your mentors. It's a great investment to accredit them in a modality for talking about career conversations, so they can regularly support you with young talent with having better career conversations, not just performance discussions. That's not the same thing, but very specific career conversations that are regular. And it takes nothing but time, but it's a really sound and personalized investment. It's very, very much appreciated all the way through an organization when someone takes a personal interest in where your career is going next. And to make that easy, the best thing to do is to create a shared language around it. So everybody is talking about careers using the same language, the same outputs, ideally even the same tools, so that when it's recorded on your systems, everybody has a shared language for it. Our language is the equation. It's skills, passions, impact, environment. You'll know what the right language is for you. And also that those outputs from that shared language, be it career goals, we call career design statement, the career action plans, are consistent documents that people can refer to and understand and get access to, that suit what you need to know about the business, and that will massively support succession planning and their confidence in decision making and seeing their future in your business.
Yeah. And so as we draw this episode to a close, remember early careers is not just about the entry point. It's about the direction throughout that. And if you give people experience, but not the tools to kind of interpret them and make them meaningful for themselves, then you're going to lose them. But if you give them, and I would say, give them the gift of the career equation, then you're going to give them the clarity that they'll need to make those decisions. You're going to give them the ownership of their career, and you're going to give them a reason to stay with you because you're looking after them throughout that journey.
Yeah. And look, if you're designing an early careers program right now, or you're struggling with retention of your early careers talent, this is the work. And if you want help embedding this into your organization, you know where to find us. Head over to thecareerequation.com or just reach out to Zoe or I directly on LinkedIn also. And if this episode helped you to think more clearly about how to grow attention, retention, engagement, and mobility for your early careers talent, then share it with someone who's also invested in building the future of your talent. And we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.